Wise resistance. When we are persecuted because of our biblical values, we should respond with wisdom and discretion. Here's Gene.
There's a lot in the Bible about responding with wisdom and discretion when we do face persecution. A lot in the New Testament about that. Now, we have an unusual response back here, and it's hard for us to identify with this, but the Hebrew midwives feared God and didn't do as the king of Egypt had told them. And what had the king of Egypt told them to do? He called in his midwives, threatened them, and said, when any little boy baby is born, kill him. Whoa. That's a pretty stiff sentence coming from the top, from the pharaoh. But they wouldn't do it. They let the boys live. Pharaoh was not happy when he found out that these midwives had ignored his order. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, I'm sure this wasn't a nice little pleasant conversation, why have you done this and let the boys live? I'm sure he is hostile. He is angry. If he's going to issue an order like that, he's going to be angry if that order is violated. Well, the midwives said to Pharaoh, the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they're vigorous and give birth before a midwife can get to them. I'm sure that was partially true. It's partially true, but it's also false by implication, obviously. But the fascinating thing is, God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very numerous. They just kept multiplying. Since the midwives feared God, he actually gave them families. He rewarded them for being willing to take this risk and actually take their lives in their hands in order to protect their fellow Israelites and these little boy babies. So we have here a very fascinating situation. You see, there are rare occasions when we see God approving of lying. For example, Rahab the harlot lied to protect the spies and said they've left when they were underneath, all of the flax on the top of her roof, and God blessed her for that, protected her for that. Now, before we deal with the lying aspect of that, and God looking with favor, there's a principle that emerges here, and that is what Jesus said. Look, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves, therefore be as shrewd as serpents, as harmless as doves. So God wants us to be wise under these circumstances. And in very rare situations, we see him condoning this kind of behavior. Now, the question for reflection is simply this. Since the Hebrew midwives and Rahab, the harlot, two exceptions, gave false information to unbelieving enemies to protect innocent life, is there ever any justification for deceiving fellow Christians, or we might even say deceiving other people? Generally speaking, absolutely not, and particularly in relationship to our fellow Christians. Ephesians 4:25 says, since you put away lying, speak the truth, each one to his neighbor. Because we are members of one another. There he's speaking about believers, but certainly we are to be people of integrity, of honesty. We're not to take these exceptional situations to justify lying. And so, this quotation here, in terms of telling the truth, these biblical illustrations do not justify giving false testimony against our neighbors and lying for purely selfish reasons. There are times when God looks at a situation like this and he sees beyond what we have done to the motive for why we have done it. The principle in Ephesians reads, we looked at this when we studied Ephesians, because of Christ's supreme act of love for us, we're to walk in love in all of our relationships with one another, and to walk in love means being truthful, putting off lying. But even in our own culture today, there may be a few situations where God does not look at what someone says that is untrue as actually being a lie. Very exceptional situations. I sometimes think about what would happen if someone came into my home, put a gun in my face, and said, "Are your children here? We're going to kill them, and we're going to kill you." And I say, my children are not here. My grandchildren are not here. And yet, they're hidden away somewhere where they can't be seen. Does God see that as a lie? I don't think so. Just as a woman in a Nazi concentration camp has a sexual relationship with one of the officers to protect her family from death. Is that adultery? No. God didn't see that as adultery. You see, as God looks at those situations, He evaluates them. Now, these are exceptional situations. The problem is there are people that will justify and rationalize immorality or lack of good ethics to justify sinful actions. That's not what this principle is teaching. It's not what the illustrations are teaching us. What it's teaching us is wise resistance with the right motives. And so let me read the principle again. When we are persecuted because of our biblical values, we should respond with wisdom and discretion. And there may be times when absolute truth will lead to disaster, personally, for ourselves, because of the situation. But it takes wisdom. Wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. It's a great illustration in terms of application of our Christian faith.